my thing is always in Portuguese. Okay, it's working. So, new video on YouTube and new format. So, hi everybody, and hi John, who is my guest for today. And this is kind of a new video of a new type of video I want to try out on YouTube, which is on sharing polyglots strategies for language learning, because there is a big diversity of polyglots, of hyperpolyglots, of language enthusiasts who sometimes create their own language learning methods. And John has a very interesting story to tell about this. So all the attention will be on you, and I will simply be asking questions in order to make sure that I understand very well what you do actually with your languages. So can you maybe start off with a short presentation of who you are?
Well, hello everyone. My name is John Profaci. I am from the United States of America. I am 29 years old, and my whole life I've been fascinated with the study, the acquisition, and pretty much practice of foreign languages. To me, it's more or less considered an art, which I really, really enjoy tremendously. Learning a language is like it's like about every aspect to it, such as speaking, reading, writing, accent reduction, which comes in time. Some people are good at accents more than others, and I understand it's not always feasible for everyone, but I think it's fascinating that I learn a language with a great accent from day one. I believe it's just pretty much like a lifestyle for me learning languages. Now, I myself have learned maybe about 30, 40, maybe some more languages. However, I want to mention I'm not fluent in all of them. I just am hardworking and dedicated, and I just enjoy it as a passion. In fact, the word fluency is often very subjective. It does refer to what it refers, but to be honest, I don't like to claim fluency in this sense because I know so many. If I speak a language, great, then great. If I just need work on it, then I'll get work on it and get better. Simple as that. Pretty much the language I'm really fluent in is English, my native language, and Italian because it's my heritage. My heritage is Sicilian, so Sicilian, Italian, and English, I would say the languages I know best. However, I probably know many of them good too, but then again, it's all relatively subjective as the person, the native speaker of whom I speak with. So I do encourage you all to learn languages as it's a great, enjoyable, and very much fundamental hobby to get into because it can enrich your life in terms of social interactions, cultural knowledge, and awareness of other people's cultural backgrounds and such. And most above all, you can travel at ease going to countries just learning a bit of a local language or the national language as well. So
Yes,
yeah.
to say, well, you've already underlined a lot of interesting aspects, which, well, are not directly related to what you will talk about regarding methodology, but nevertheless, it's totally true that there are different levels that we have, and we usually have one native language. Where I do have one native language, I don't have two, and we have different levels in the different languages that we speak. And indeed, what is fluency? That's a whole big debate in the language learning community, because indeed some people will claim they are fluent in the language, and another person might not agree, or might have another definition, because there is not really a definition with fluency. But that's a whole debate, which is fascinating. But that's something to discuss in another video, because I want to focus on methodology here. But so yeah, John, you said that you've studied many languages, probably more than most polyglots that I know, because different people will be driven in different ways. So I also love learning languages, but I haven't dived into as many as you. Although I do have some knowledge of about 20, but I haven't studied 40, or I can't claim to speak more than 10. So that's everybody's lifestyle. So regarding methodology, strategies, and so on, how would you explain that you have been working on languages using a method that you might have either created yourself, or that you kind of took from somebody else but kind of changed it in your own way to suit better your own working method?
Well, let me give you a perfect example. Myself, when I dive into a new language, even if it's the most rare, yet obscure but extremely interesting languages that interest me in every respect. I like to learn everything. I just, even the bigger ones, smaller ones, no matter what language it is, I like to learn everything, like the word for bed or like drawer, all these words in a foreign language, little words, big words, I like to learn. So what I'll do is, okay, I'll use a technique called the immersion technique. It's like most polyglots know about this. In fact, a lot of them explain it in depth. Essentially, what it is where, let's say I am going to the bank. Okay, so I'm going in my car. So in Spanish, let's say, yo voy para mi carro. I'm going to my car. Yo pongo mis manos sobre ruedas. I put my hands on the wheel. Yo empujo en la pedal así para manejar el banco. I put my foot on the pedal. It takes, you got my idea. Basically, it's a structure of things I'm doing in the process while learning my target language. You know, let's say I'm driving to the bank and I get a flat tire, una llanta desinflada. That's in Spanish, flat tire. That's the thing. You got to learn every aspect of the language as you're living your life. So I'll maybe focus on two languages per se in a long period of time. It doesn't matter how long, because until I get the gist of everything and it sinks into my head, I went on to the next one, and I have another two, that is. So once I've learned a language, so let's say a good B2 level, I think then it's fair enough to move on to a second one. So currently I want to mention I am learning Chechen language from Chechnya, which is a region of the Caucasus near Russia. And I just have friends from Chechnya, excuse me, and I want to be able to speak to them. So essentially, when I just started learning a language from day one, I will learn the beginning stages, like the grammar and all. But even in the beginning stages, I want to go in depth as a beginner, like every single element in the language that should be learned and acquired by a beginner speaker. Essentially, my goal is, I don't even think about like C2, C1, B2, and all that, but just to learn as much as I can and live the language, even if there's no one out there around me that possibly speaks it, and just practice my target language as much as I possibly can in order to gain a high level in the language. So I'll just, always learn words. It's all about words. That basically that's all languages is. A language is. The more words you learn or know in a particular language, the better off you are, because the more you can fully converse about any topic. I even like to go in depth with my words too, like learn the small words, big words, random words. That's pretty much how it is. Now, I can't say I have that kind of proficiency in all languages I speak. However, I can say that, good amount of them that are useful that I really love, which are most of them, I can get there in time. If not, I'm getting there already. But then again, everyone's learning style and everyone's mentality, or I should say, how everyone's brain work is different. Brain works is different. So people have to understand every method is different for each person. Not everyone has one particular method that works, but rather many different methods. Essentially, my point is you have to find the method that works for you, someone or another. For me, it's immersion method, so looking up words. Once I get to a good A2 level, then I'll look up words. I understand what the grammar works, how grammar works in the language. That's essentially what I mean too. Knowing so many languages, you can get the gist of understanding how another language will work and it overlaps each other. I'm not just saying a language in the same family, but it overlaps, because some languages have case systems, like Russian, even Chechen has case systems. It has a few other cases that Russian may not have. It has four genders too, which is yeah, it has masculine, feminine, others too. But I don't really pay attention to grammar either. The grammar, like the rules and all, predator, whatever, I don't even know it, to be honest. I just pay attention to how the language is used in context. And I get good at grammar just in the process, just like I learned English grammar, my native language. So essentially, that's what I'm saying. It works different for every people, but that's how it works for me. Just immersion and trying my best, even when English is everywhere. After you use English everywhere, immersing myself in the language.
So if I understand well, you basically both use kind of an input-based method because you immerse yourself with the language. So that's rather what is advised by Steve Kaufman, like the input-based method. But you also, at the same time, use an output-based method, which is Benny Lewis's method, which is speaking from day one. So when you speak about grammar and cases, you rather acquire it because you have contact with the language, because you get yourself in this situation where you'll get contact with the language. And on the other hand, you put it into practice by speaking as early as possible. And you think that grammar will come in your head in a natural way, just like we learn our native language. And you will naturally begin to use it actively even without having learned it.
That's precisely what I mean. Yes, pretty much. Language learning it shouldn't be stressed or a lot of effort either. I don't believe in putting effort into it. I believe in the natural, enjoyable, enjoyment as it is. Like you gotta enjoy the procedure of learning. You gotta enjoy every bit of it, from learning an alphabet if you need to, and how to pronounce words and all, to forming sentences, talk about complex things in the language such as politics, religion, all sorts. That's essentially what I mean. Like if you're not enjoying the sound of the language or something that draws you to it, something that, if you will, motivates you to the language, then you're not gonna enjoy the procedure of learning that particular language. You're not gonna get far with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a perfect example now. Okay, I've been learning, well, I was learning at some point Indonesian a bit, but I don't speak Indonesian because I know apa kabar, terima kasih, which is a few words, but it's not enough because I didn't enjoy the process of learning. I found no use for it. There's nothing really that drew me to that particular language. However, certain languages that it draws me to, it motivates me to learn. It's something about it motivates me. The sound of it, the uniqueness of it, the rareness of it, believe it or not. I'm more drawn to a lot of rare languages aside from the common ones I know, like Chinese and Spanish and all them. But that's the thing. If a language it doesn't draw me to nothing about it, I don't think anyone can, pretty much learn that language. There has to be something that motivates someone to learn it. Now, if you talk about fluency, in my opinion, fluency without a doubt is near C1 level, but anyone that enjoys and loves the language will get there naturally because you got to fall in love with the language. Polyglots like Luca Lampariello have explained this, that you have to fall in love with the language in order to learn it to a high, high, high degree. That's the truth. If you don't love a language, you pretty much won't learn it. You won't get anywhere with it. So, I can say there are many great polyglots. In fact, all polyglots are great. We're all good. We're all, if you want to say gifted, whatever, but we're all in this together. So, realistically speaking, to love a language, to get it fluent in it, you gotta love it from day one and be consistent at it and prioritize on it.
Yeah, like you say, if you want to get to such a high level like C1 level, which is an advanced level, which is even above the level you need, the bare minimum level you need to study at university or to do a job. Like C1 is already so high that few people reach that. And
Yeah.
we only reach that if we have a personal reason for that. So usually when we have a passion, it's because of passion that I got to my level in English. If I did not have that motivation for English, or if I did not like the language, I would probably not have reached the level I am at right now, because I have a lot of input with English, even now that I've not really learned much in the past, even easily 5 years. But I still get contact, and I'm still not learning that much from it. But it's passion for English that got me there. And I could say the same about my other strong languages like Spanish or Portuguese, which I got a lot of contact with back then. And indeed, I got to a C1 ish level, like something in that area. And for other languages, like for my Dutch, I still have a good level because I teach it, but I don't have the same passion for English. So my Dutch remained at a slightly lower level. So indeed, you want to get to C1, C2, you need to love it. And just like you say, if you want to learn a language with your method, which is immersion, it is very hard. I've tried it. It's very hard to use this method if you don't really like the language. You can't really do it if you force yourself to learn a language you don't enjoy, but you have to learn it for school, for example. Or it's possible, but considerably harder. So yeah, you only pick the languages that you feel drawn towards, and so you will try to create this immersive environment where you will act like a kid. Actually, you will just hear it a lot because you get in contact with the language a lot, and you will try to speak it as much as possible, like a native speaker would do, learning their language.
Yes, of course, and that's the thing too. Most people are prone to think that, in order to learn the language that they need for work, they have to love it. And that's pretty much the truth. However, if you're forced to learn a language, you're never going to learn it. Because I remember even being in high school, everyone in high school was forced to learn Spanish, but because everyone was forced to do it because it's a requirement, if you will. That's why so many people in high school failed at Spanish and really didn't do good in that particular subject of language acquisition in high school. The United States, that's how it is because a lot of school systems have requirements like Spanish or French. You have to take one of the languages. I took Spanish, and I even before, I guess before I went to high school, I had interest in it, so I had an advantage because I always pushed my level in Spanish even before I went to Spanish in high school. But what I'm saying, my point is, if you have a language that you're forced to do for a purpose in high school, like Spanish, French, you're not going to do well because you have to remember too, there are other subjects in high school that people do, such as mathematics, algebra, arithmetic, all these things, history, science. So that's the truth. If I'm to say so myself, I do think that a lot of Americans, many Americans in this country, should want to learn a language, should, want to enjoy it. But I don't, in a sense, I do blame the school systems because they don't really teach it the proper way. They teach in a sense where it's a requirement rather than an enjoyment or an obligation to do it. They don't like associate language with other things too in the high school. For instance, like when I'm learning a language, I like to associate with other things I do, such as fitness, workout, walking, or even culinary aspects or culture aspects. So I like to associate with everything. Precisely what I mean is, that's how language should be done, associated with other things someone may enjoy, like someone that enjoys editing or filmmaking or culinary aspects. Associate the language in that aspect, but do it in your own will, not the will of someone else. Just do it completely on your own. I don't learn languages for anyone or to please anyone. I do it because I love it to please myself because I really enjoy the culture of the people language. Like, don't get me wrong, people are happy when you speak in their language because it shows them you're proud of them and their culture and their pride in all that sense, but you don't do it for anyone but yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a passion that drives us, and indeed, I'm not learning languages because of somebody else. It's just because I enjoy it or because I have some specific reasons for that. One question I have about your particular situation, because I know that you maintain more languages than most polyglots and more than I do. Um, the issue that I see, and I do wonder how you do to find a solution to that problem, is that whenever I use that method, because I also loved the immersive methods, I've used it for every one of my languages. The issue is that you have to spend so much time on it, since you listen to it as much as possible. You read in the language. You do self talks in the language. You listen to music. You listen to podcasts. So we have many different ways to practice the language. But when we do that, it takes time away from other languages that we either also want to improve or we maintain or that we need in our everyday life. So when you have that many languages, how do you do to use two systems which are kind of opposite? Because the immersive method focuses on one language to improve it fast and efficiently, and that's one language. And on the other hand, you have all the other languages which are numerous and which also require time. How do you explain that you manage to conciliate the two?
Well, let me explain. Basically, Okay, you got families of languages. There are families: Romance,
Mm.
Slavic, Turkic, Sino-Tibetan, Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, all these families you have of languages. For myself personally, that I speak. So let's say, for instance, I'm trying to learn a language like Telugu. Telugu is an Indian language of South India from the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana and parts of some other states like Karnataka and all where it's spoken by many people. But what I'm saying is it's a Dravidian language. So it's similar to other ones such as Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Tulu, etc., etc. So essentially, what I'm saying is, let's say I had a mastery, which I don't, by the way, but let's just say, theoretically speaking, I had a mastery of Telugu. I mastered very, very well to a high, high degree. I'm decent at it, but I'm saying, like, let's say I had a mastery, and then I want to learn Kannada. Let's say I mastered Kannada. Each language I learn interlaps with each other. So basically, the words are slightly different in both of them. And therefore, I feel like myself personally, I don't know about anyone else, but once you learn several of a particular family, that goes for even like Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese, the words interlap, and eventually you don't confuse them even. They're so similar, and you could just speak each one at ease. But I don't think obviously that could be done with Italian and Russian and Turkish and I don't know, Swahili, because they're all completely different languages. But that's essentially what I'm saying is once you've learned the one to a great, great high level, then another one, once you get a B2 in one, let's say, you start another one that's similar. You start to not confuse them and they overlap with each other. Then maybe you want to get out of your comfort zone and try another one. Essentially, what I'm saying is it's got to be an enjoyable process, but you'll start to find that once you know so many, the rest come at ease. At least in most of our community, they find that learning them comes easier in time. I think for a lot of us, we can say that we learn languages easier in time as we know so many, and we don't get them confused. We're able to even maintain many of them because we know many of a kind or of a family.
Yeah, that's indeed a good explanation because well, we've all noticed that with the languages which are closely related, like you said, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Catalan, Romanian, they all share things in common. And we could also say that about English and Dutch. And then you also have Afrikaans and you have the Scandinavian languages like Norwegian, Swedish, Danish. It's indeed way easier to maintain like French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Catalan than maintaining French, English, Arabic, Chinese, or Mandarin Chinese, or any other of the languages in China, and yeah, let's say Russian or Polish, which are they all different languages. And we could also add, well, we have so many different language families, and we have dialects, so that would be way harder because if you practice, let's say, Spanish, you will, and you speak Portuguese, you will unconsciously maintain your Portuguese because you will have similar grammatical aspect and similar vocab items, and therefore you don't practice Portuguese directly, but you use it indirectly, and therefore it kind of still works here somewhere. And this example would be even more true with, for example, pairs like Dutch and Afrikaans, which are very, very similar. Or you could take Spanish and Catalan, which are, of course, not identical. They are different languages, but are still, they have things in common. So you think that that's the secret to you maintaining all these languages while having this immersion?
Yes, I do. However, I do want to note something. Can't be done unless you master at least one foreign language fully. So, for instance, the first foreign language I learned was actually Italian, standard Italian, no like Italian regional language or dialect of Italy. So once I mastered Italian, I got to a high level. I don't know my level, and I'd rather not say because it can be a little more or less controversial, but from people that hear me speak it and all, but I'm just saying I have a high level. Yes, I do. But once I had learned Italian to a high, high level, it was very easy to go on to Spanish. That helped me with Spanish, and then that helped me with Portuguese, and then French. and then Romanian, Catalan, all these other Italian regional languages and dialects of Italy as well. So essentially, yes, it's true. Learning a language, however, helps overlap with each other. And then I decided to learn Chinese, and that helped me learn Cantonese a bit. Then I decided to learn Russian, helping with all the other Slavic ones, and then Turkic, and then like I said, before I knew it, I found myself speaking them very, very well and comfortably, and very much like eloquently. But then again, you say in terms of perfection you don't have to worry about because no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect in language learning. However, it is possible to be proficient in many, yes, but it takes a lot of years and time and experience and exposure to speaking a particular language.
Yeah, that's very interesting with like how languages are intertwined together, and I think if we could not use this aspect, we would really struggle to maintain all these languages. Actually, that reminds me of my case with between Dutch and German. I am around, I would say, C1 in Dutch, and I would consider my German as B1-ish. And for years, I maintained it passively at A2. So for many years, um, like I wasn't working on German, and sometimes I would use it not even once a month. And when I say once a month, I mean sometimes it's just even 30 seconds. So I, for years, I never had a conversation with someone. I never watched a movie or read something. So it was really basically I felt it in my brain that my Dutch was itself maintaining my German, although at A2 you're not fluent, you're very far from fluent, but you can still get your way across, especially when you master one of the two. Just like you said, for Dutch, I claim that I master it not because I know the whole dictionary and my vocab is still, in my opinion, more limited than it should be, but my grammar is very good and my word order is, I think, like native. And I think that helps me a lot to maintain German because I know which grammatical aspects are the same in two because when I was learning German, I was listening a lot. I was using the input based method. So I was basically using a podcast and listening to them for months. And with that, my brain internalized that the word order and most of the grammatical aspect regarding word order was the same in the two languages. And so I knew which words were the same in the two as well. I knew a few of the words which were not the same and which were useful, and therefore I could maintain a very basic conversational level in German, although sometimes I literally did not use it for 6 months to 1 year. So I think that's a bit what you mean with having one language that you really, really master or for which you really, really feel comfortable, like getting to B2 plus because of using it a lot. And then having another language that you would have studied or you would have had input with it, you know how it works and you can make the links and you can leave it dormant in your head while you know that you can still use it if necessary, like anytime, thanks to the other one. And so sometimes when I speak German, it feels like it's not really German. It's like it has a Dutch, like subconscious part. And so I believe that that's really a method that many polyglots use, or especially when you've added a lot of languages and when some of these languages are related to others that you know, but you don't really have the time or the opportunity to use them, but still you know that you can still kind of use them in case, but you know that you will not be very, very far because you're still limited.
Yes, and the thing is too, be surprised at how many words, like languages that are of a family, have in common that are nearly the same. Plus, the grammatical aspects of them that have so many similarities. I'll give you a good example. Turkish and Tatar. Okay, I've learned Tatar language after having learned Turkish very, very well to a high degree. So many words, like the word for good, iyi in Turkish, iyi. Tatar is yakşı, yaşı, yaşı. So çok iyi, very good in Turkish, and Tatar will be bik yaşı, which don't really sound too similar, but they're so easy to learn because once you learn one that's so you don't get my point. Like at a good level, the vocabulary even intertwines with everything. Just a little bit of pronunciation difference and some word differences. My point is, you'll be surprised at how easy it will be for anyone that is their language, whether it be language learner or polyglot, to learn more and more languages and become a polyglot. Because the more languages you know, the more of a person you become. There's always that saying, you learn another language, you're a different person. Essentially, that's true. Like every time I'm learning a language, it's almost as though I'm becoming one of the people. Like I'm becoming a Chechen, learning Chechen so well. So that's essentially what I'm saying. It's a great rewarding thing for anyone to do in that sense because not only is it fun and rewarding, it's also exciting when you talk to people and you speak to them in their native language.
Mhm. And one thing I was wondering regarding the immersive method, um, do you literally keep like your dictionary open at all time because you will at some point come across a word you don't know yet, especially when you need vocab going up to attire, which actually is a word I only know in my native language and English. I never need these words in other languages. I think I have a passive knowledge of this kind of words in a few languages, but not an active one. So do you really keep around your dictionary open at all time?
To be honest, yes. Literally, what I'll do is, okay, even if I'm in the car going somewhere, I'll look around, I'll see a building. In Russian, it's здание. In Chinese Mandarin, it's 建筑. So I'll look up all these words for things around me, pick at least two different languages, and look up all these words. Because my definition of fluency is not native fluency, because I don't think, it's realistic for other people. But like, I just want to be myself rounded in case these words come up. Like, for instance, I looked up a word the other day, and what was it? Russian. Yeah, it was a посудомоечная машина, which is dishwasher. Word for dishwasher. And repetition helps too. I just repetition technique always helps memorizing many words. Like I don't know what it is. I just like repeat a word at least like dozens of times. It sticks with me whenever I come across that word, and things I'm doing with the immersion method just comes to me like it's like my own native tongue. It's amazing. I'd recommend this technique to anyone, the immersion method, because as you're traveling or going places, you will want to learn these words, just even if they're random words. But first, I would recommend, above all, learning the most important and common words in your target language, because it can't be done learning the less common things to a higher level unless you fully mastered everything according to like what you're going to use, the useful words that is in life and what you do in everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do need to have that solid foundation because otherwise you simply cannot express yourself. I mean, if you don't know basic prepositions, basic pronouns, basic conjugations of basic verbs, you simply cannot function. You're stuck, and I think that's where many students are. Because myself as a language teacher, I very often come across students who don't even know the most basic words, and I'm like, of course you struggle to talk. You cannot make a sentence because you don't have the words. But that's kind of yeah that's also the way that school works. It's you don't have the motivation, therefore the memory is not as productive as it should be. And actually, so when you come across these words and you translate them, do you try to memorize them for good because you don't want to have to waste time looking that word up again later? Or do you simply look it up anytime you need it and you don't know it yet until it eventually gets in your head?
Here's the thing. I'm going to forget words. We're all going to forget or be rusty even in languages of themselves. But the more you use these words in context or try to use them or force yourself to use them, the more they're going to stick with you for forever. Why not? Because, even the word κυβέρνησης in Greek, κυβέρνησης, which means government, or like the word κοινοβουλία, which means parliament, or the word politica κατάσταση του κόσμου, political situation, all these words that I learned in Greek at the time stuck with me because I tried to use them in context. When you're using the words in context one way or another, even if it is talking to yourself and practicing to yourself, it's great because that's how you push your level essentially. It's all
Mhm.
about words. The more words you know, the better off you are, the more things you can express. Now, my Greek is far from perfect. However, I do have a great vocabulary because I'm constantly learning new words in Greek and other languages too, and trying to practice them in context with people so that they'll stick with me, you know? And that's the thing. Like, people have told me your Greek's better than mine, which I don't know. I don't think that's true. It's definitely not true because we're all good. We're all decent. I think everyone's good, natives and non-natives. Even knowing a little bit of a language is impressive, you have to admit. But the thing is, like, I think that I'm just very hardworking and so dedicated and devoted to my passion. I want to go in depth with the language till there's like almost nothing to learn. Even like the word for button in Russian, pugovitsa, pugovitsa. Even that word I want to know because why not? That's what I'm saying. Every word matters in a language because I want to be able to like fully express myself. But I also want to mention that I don't care about C2, C1. That's not my goal. But rather my goal is just to like be able to fully converse. In fact, I'm not too knowledgeable about the level system. I do know that C1 is advanced. But I can say if that's my case in many languages, great. If not, either way, I'm passionate. That's above all the case. We got to be passionate about what we do. We shouldn't regard levels and all. Just be passionate.
Yeah, indeed. Passion is like the driver, right? It's the thing that
That's right.
makes you
Yeah.
go further.
Yes.
Um, so I noticed that you work very much with the output-based method, but do you think that you could still achieve a very good result without having input?
Um,
Like what is the relationship between the output you get and the amount of output that you produce?
I believe, if I'm to say so myself, best way to get native input. I mean, you can get, well, let me mention it this way. Like, you can get input from anyone, even a second language speaker. But
Mm.
natives that are older, like older, people that are older in age, I should say, that have learned the language, been in the country, speaking it their whole life, every day speaking, are still like maybe even a citizen or national of that country that are trying to help you get better. You should get their input. So I believe like more so input is good too in that sense. You got to get it from the natives. So like say they'll tell you if they're really honest and want to help you. If they really want to help you to achieve a high level in a particular language or really push that level to an advanced level, they will tell you what to do. So that's what I believe. I always make sure I'm not just using my own like guess knowledge or my own like understanding of the language and how I do and all. I always want to make sure that I ask someone that's more advanced language, someone I know that's an advanced speaker or a native.
Yeah, so getting you get your input from the locals or from the natives, and this input. So you say it is important to have input because that way you can build your subconscious grammar and your subconscious abilities, the ability to understand native speaker, to understand even when they speak faster, to get the vocab, to get the grammar, to not have to think about the grammar later because you say that you don't pay that much attention to grammar because you acquire it naturally. But for that, you of course need a lot of input. I saw in
Yes.
a video that Steve Kaufman said that for Russian, I believe, he only started speaking after 2 years because he needed a lot of input to feel confident with that language.
Right. Well, in a sense, I think that's a good thing too. Like he says, he needed help after 2 years, which is fine. Everyone's different, like I said. Everyone's methodology or the way they learn works differently. I prefer, however, to do Benny Lewis, where you just speak from day one. Even if you make a mistake, you get better that way. I prefer, in other words, to learn a language like I learned English with a natural procedure. But I'm aware some people can't do that because maybe like their brain is not as not as good as working as when they were kids. We're not kids. We don't learn naturally necessarily like all kids do at a certain age at least. But then again, I believe we have to make the best of our learning and try to speak from day one.
Mhm.
And just even if we make a mistake, get better. So as
Yeah.
I said, I mentioned certain techniques that do work, such as immersion and all. So, you don't even have to be in a family where like your parents speak the language, your grandparents or whatnot. Yeah, I think that like I said, myself and my own opinion, or my own experience and story rather. Um, my parents don't speak any languages, just English. My dad understands basic Italian and Sicilian very high level. He understands. Okay. My grandparents don't really speak much either. They're like my grandmother understands perfect Italian, Sicilian. My grandfather spoke it very, very well when he was living. But then again, like I was born and raised a monolingual American, to be honest. I just always had the drive and the interest to wanna apply my methods I mentioned in order to learn a language to a very great level and to learn as many as I can. And, surprisingly, I'm able to do it. So that's why I want to encourage people and give them the enlightenment encouragement to never give up, to do what they're doing, because I believe anyone can be success with learning a particular language or languages.
Yeah, I think that as long as you don't stop, you cannot fail. I saw recently a video of Jan van der Raa, who says that if you are driven, if you have the motivation, and if you go for it, if you practice a language, if you listen to it, and you never stop, it's not possible to fail. If you don't abandon, if you don't give up, you'll get there eventually. But then why do people end up stopping? Because, well, yeah, they don't get to their goal because they are not driven enough. They do not always have this intrinsic motivation. So the motivation that comes from you, from your passion, from your necessities, your needs. Um, if you do not have a good reason to learn the language, you will probably not stick to it long enough to get to these B1, B2, C1 levels. So without that motivation, I'm not sure that the technique could really work. When we are a kid, we have the motivation because we develop links and with our family, and we get this attachment. We need to communicate with them, so we need to learn to understand what they say. We need to learn to communicate with them if we want to get love from our parents. So we have a really good reason to learn it, and therefore we have the motivation. But for most people, for those who don't succeed at learning a language, even some polyglots don't succeed at some languages, that's sometimes because they don't have the drive. That's the case for most people who failed, who didn't understand how their brain works to learn a language. But even for some polyglots, we still sometimes feel that it's difficult and we want to give up. It happened to me for a few languages too. Like Chinese has been quite difficult for me, and several times I give up because I noticed I wasn't learning. But it's mostly subconscious. So there is learning. You don't always see it, just like when you go to the gym. There is something happening in your body. You don't see the result. You need months for that, but it's still working inside. And language learning is a bit the same. It's you're acquiring, your brain is acquiring, because most of the language learning journey is and process is acquiring unconsciously. So you will learn things consciously, but the biggest part will happen without you consciously noticing it. And so we simply have to not stop and to yeah to keep doing our best, and until at some point it will eventually work.
Yes, I want to mention too, maybe a language, a particular language, can be out of one's league at the moment. It's for example, for a while I decided like I don't want to learn Chechen. It's not useful. Until recently, like maybe this week, I was like, I said I want to learn Chechen. I'm very interested in it. It's catching up to me. I want to learn this language. But then again, that interest in a particular language and drive and all can come later. And it can just come to you naturally. You don't have to necessarily go chasing after trying your best to learn if it doesn't interest you. The interest could come later, you know?
Mm.
In a sense, it's like, some languages are out of our league at the moment, but then later on, we can get interest in them again, we can become more interested in them, or find out that they can be important one way or another for the job, or simply put, just because we are able to speak with more people in them than we think, or simply put, that we gain the interest naturally, where we just decide, like, I should do it. I really want to do it now. So yeah. So don't worry if that particular language does not interest you, because that interest in that particular language could come later. But then again, you should always be active with a particular language, even when that language is out of your league. So, like when I wasn't learning a particular language, let's say like I want to say Gujarati, which is an Indian language of northern India, Gujarat state. I was still trying to better my Hindi in order to learn Gujarati because I knew that, like, Gujarati's common around here, but I couldn't get there without learning Hindi. Once I learned Hindi fully, I learned that Gujarati would became much, much easier and gained more interest in it over time.
Yeah, it's funny how things evolve with time. That your interest can change. It changes according to the languages you learn, the experiences you have. But sometimes it's hard to explain. I had this situation that I've had contact with Dutch ever since I was around 5, and I never managed to learn it. And I live in Flanders, so I live in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, and I had some immersive camps, like summer camp, sports camp, because my parents thought that since I've had a lot of passive Dutch in my head when I was a kid, and so they thought that I would have some kind of, it would all work magically. Um, and I had to wait for my 18 years because I learned English from my 16 to my 18 on my own because I love the language and I discovered how I learn languages, or rather a part of it. So I got some methods and I did understand how kind of my brain works. And I decided to use the same method for Dutch. And actually, when I noticed it was working and that I could begin to feel how the language works, how the grammar works, how to pronounce it, and I noticed I was getting somewhere there, I got the motivation, and that motivated me to keep on learning more afterwards. So I had no motivation when I was a kid, and I spent 10 years, maybe even close to 15 years, not learning anything while having contact with Dutch. And then magically in 2 years, when I was 18, it just worked. And I still remember clearly that time when I must have been around 10, 12 years old. My sister has a native level in Dutch. So she has a native level in both French and Dutch. And I was walking in the street and I was thinking, I will never be able to speak it as she does, or even to speak it at all. I wish with all my strength that I could even make a sentence correctly in Dutch. That I could just get some level. I wasn't even trying to get to C1, C2. Even a B1 would have been nice at that point. And it did come eventually later. And I never thought it would happen. I never thought I could learn Dutch. And I did not also believe that I could learn anything else. So just like you say, things can change in life, interest can change. There are many factors that can change your life. And even when you're 50, you can start learning languages. I read of the story of a lady who was 80 and she was learning Russian at 80. I think was her first foreign language. She might have been like American or British or something. So you can always get there. It might sometimes take a bit more time, but if you don't give up, you will eventually get there.
The truth, that's why I always tell people, you really want to do something like learn a language and you think it's never too late per se. It just, you have to understand too, for most adults it's a bit harder because you have to make more effort maybe, or do a little bit more work or find more time, because as adults we're very busy and our brain it doesn't really work as well as when we were kids. But then again, there's plenty of polyglots, as you know, that prove that wrong, such as Steve Kaufman. I'm sure he learned at a later age, and that's what I mean. Therefore, he's great at what he does. He's very talented and good. So anyone at any age can do it for his own testimony when it comes to language learning. I just think that no matter what, you can be any age and any skill set, you got to have the passion and the drive in order to do, and that's what it is. It doesn't even have to do with the fact that you're born with ability or not. it's not even about ability. It's about the drive and passion, finding a significantly great way in order to do it.
Yeah, just like you say, Steve Kaufman's a good example. I think he's around 75, around, and he said, if I'm not mistaken, that he learned. So he speaks between 15 and 20 something, and I think he said that he learned more languages ever since he retired than during all of his career. But during his career, he studied like Mandarin Chinese and Cantonese and maybe a few others, but he mostly studied after 65. And actually, I read in the Polyglot Project book that so about 10 years ago, when he was 65, he could speak 11 languages. Now, I think I saw somewhere that a video was made where he would have spoken 20, or where he says that he speaks 20, which is possible. So imagine that between 65 and 75, roughly, he would have learned around, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 languages. That's crazy. But that really gives a signal to the world, like, you can do it. And it's not because you're a genius. Well, Steve has experience, he has knowledge, and he has his own brain. But I mean, other people can do it too. Maybe not at the same point, because he also has this drive that we have. But if he could do it with even 8 languages, you can do it with 1. So people should not lose hope.
Yes. Let me mention, anyone can do it. Anyone can learn a lot of languages, per se, many languages. Anyone can become a polyglot. I believe it. However, you always have the kind of people that say you can't do it, it's impossible, like people that just want to, per se, put you down. You got to respect those people too. We got to love those people regardless, because they're just jealous and they're a bit like haters and all. But you know what? I just encourage people to do their best. I encourage people to learn languages, because I personally, I have my own story. We all have our stories as polyglot type or polyglots and all. We want to encourage people and not put them down. So in our community, that's essentially what we do. We encourage others. We encourage each other's. We befriend each other to try to help each other and all become better. I have many polyglot friends out there, so many I made. They're all great, great people, very supportive and good fans of mine, as I am fans of theirs. So, we just have to collaborate and help each other with this procedure and adventure in language learning. And, I just want to say, we should never ever belittle each other, but constructive criticism is what we should accept in order to get better and to better ourselves, to always get better. Because I always take constructive criticism in my journey. It doesn't always help too much, but on the long run, it does help, because I do get better. I do better, for instance, my Turkish, my Azeri, and all that, in order to get to speak better and to speak like they do. So constructive criticism for advanced speakers or native speakers is essentially what we want to hear. But then again, like I said, bullying is not called for, because we got to support each other in our community. We got to really appreciate each other and support each other.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why communities are amazing, just like Hypia, where we met. And from where I know so many other polyglots, and these actually all the events that we've had online have also helped, like the polyglot conference, polyglot gathering. But yeah, getting to have this contact with each other through social media, that really helps so much. I suggest we wrap it up, because I wasn't expecting to talk so much, but so we first focus on your method, and then we also have some other interesting topic to talk about. But all in all, I think that we've exchanged a lot of very, very wise and interesting information for other polyglots, be them like polyglots or even people interested in languages. You don't have to speak 10 languages to want to learn more about it. Even monolinguals might get some interesting piece of info from this video. So I really hope this content was interesting for them. So for the people watching us, and I will meet them in another video with another fantastic polyglot who want to share wisdom. So thank you very much, John, for coming, and I will be
My
closing.
pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you all. All the best to you all. God bless. Bye-bye.
I'll just stop the recording. Yep.